Welcome to the Leadership Launchpad Project, brains behind the business. It's your front row seat to the business elite. New episodes twice a week.
Welcome to the Leadership Launchpad, brains behind the business. Obviously, I'm Rob Kalwarowski, and the yang to my yin is here today, Susan. Susan, how are you?
Oh my gosh, I'm so excited. I can't believe we're finally in this new format. I know I'm still getting used to it. It's not necessarily day one, but yeah, I'm just really, really excited to be here with our fabulous guests. So let's go. Let's get this party started.
Absolutely. And instead of a quote, I just want to tell a little story. Of course, our fabulous guest and I actually met in August of 2006.
Wow.
And one of the earliest memories I have was we were at international orientation together, and it was some meeting about something, and we were sitting there and we had a bucket of milk next to us. And the rest of the students did not go for the milk. And so we sat there and we must have drank, 8 to 10 milks each. And so with that story, an incredible guest with us, Rasto Racz, the head of transformation at Lint, and obviously former MIT engineer. And for folks out there, he was on the Slovakian national team as a breaststroker as well. He swam in college. Rasto, how are you?
Thanks, Rob. Thanks, Susan, for having me. Super. I'm very good. Thanks for the invitation. And honestly, Rob, it was a good introduction because it's a reminder. Now I remember it, but I've almost forgotten. I, however, remember. I think it was the very, very first encounter and even exchange of some sort of words between us. We were sitting in the room, which was later like a 2003 room for me, 2003 course. And we were sitting next to each other. And I said, it was the first time I actually left Europe or Slovakia, first time in an English-speaking environment. And I said, hey, where are you from? And if I ask you now, where are you from, Rob? Where were you born?
Ottawa,
what city?
Canada.
And I was like, where? Never heard of.
Yeah.
And then you had to repeat it like 3 times. Ottawa. Ottawa. Okay, that's how I pronounce it. Obviously, I knew the city, not only knowing a little bit the geography, but being also a big ice hockey fan. The Senators and in general. So that is actually what I remember, and I have mentioned this story to a few friends a couple of times who asked me, so did you struggle with English? Well, yes, I struggled. And my first encounter with Rob, I didn't even understand, the capital of Canada. So, but hey, again, very happy to be on this call or podcast.
Rasto, you know where I want to start with you before Rob jumps in. Do you have any interesting stories about my friend Robert here from the MIT days?
Well, I do, but I should have prepared him. But which one?
No,
I will
that.
look. This I had not thought a minute of preparing a story, but there are many. First one, Rob is probably the only person who I remember not having either a bike or taking the we called it, I think, shuttle, MIT shuttle. He would always walk, but we lived across the river from the campus. He would walk no matter whether it was summer, winter, raining, or snowing. And he always told me, it helps me, clear my mind or sort of relax. Mm-hmm. And that's, I'm a little bit going, I guess, into the topic, and that's why I was so surprised, to learn about also Rob's up and down life story, because Rob has always been, for me, like actually the example of someone who can take a step back, and even in the super demanding and competitive environment of MIT, but mostly demanding, say, well, I'm not trying to optimize every second of my life by, biking home and quickly eating and doing my homework. No, I will walk. And with that goes also the fact that Rob, or at least that's what he told me, he would manage his sleep pretty well. Like 99% of the student, and at Princeton is probably the same. You do all-nighters, 2, 3, no, not full all-nighters, but you don't sleep much.
Yeah.
And Rob would always say with his nonchalance, I need to have my 8 hours of sleep. And I don't know if you used to get those 8 hours of sleep, but I never did. So that's and then there are many others if time permits.
I never did an all-nighter, and the thing there's
Never,
actually scientific
ever,
reasoning
not
for this.
once.
No, there's actually good reasoning for this. So the brain, in the way it works, is, and like at MIT, you always see those folks who are at the door of the exam and they're studying.
That was me.
And it's that has a potential to work. Basically, your short-term memory is within 2 hours of the thing you can remember. Otherwise, you need to sleep to process the information. And so I was always very focused on, and then also just showing up and having night sleep makes you think better. And so for me, I always was, I'm good at, like, I'm done studying and I'm going to sleep. So it's in my brain, and then I'll go and make it happen.
Reliable Rob. Hey.
This sounds very, very smart, very reliable, very intelligent. Why didn't you convince me? When was it? 20 years ago. I would have been thankful, or 18 years ago.
Another high performance habit that both Rasto and I did together was we did the sauna.
You brought it up.
You tell the story. Go ahead.
No. I was actually, the second thing which came up to my mind was the sauna. But you go ahead.
Yeah, so
you go ahead.
We used to go and do the sauna and then cold showers. We did 3 reps of them. And one time I think we saw a Nobel Prize winner naked in the sauna as well with us, which was awesome. But yeah, it was something that it was really only the 2 of us who did that. We invited folks a few times, but we did it regularly in the off season.
Shocking that there were no takers on that one, gentlemen.
I wonder what will be the interpretations of what you just said, Rob. But also to add, I only started going to the sauna my last term of college, when everything was almost, decided, and then I could relax a little bit.
Yeah, so we have to get this party started officially. Our audience is dying to plug into this backstory beyond the MIT funny stories. Tell us about how you landed where you have landed today in this transformational leadership role at Lint. Give us the backstory.
Yeah, gladly. Look, and I don't think it's any unusual way. Out of MIT, I actually decided to continue with the years of studying further in Paris. I joined my, that time, girlfriend, my current wife, in Paris, in France. I continued the studies, and then I started a job in consultancy. A.T. Kearney, the strategy consulting firm based in Chicago. So I did that for 8 years. Reasons, hey, I wasn't 100% sure what I wanted to do. It sounded like a good business beginning, because, the usual reasons of seeing many things, not focusing on one thing at once, and obviously that being the job itself being challenging, you learn a lot. And it also had a sort of like a veil of interest or enticing, which a lot of my friends, who are still my friends, they went into it. So I wanted to see what it's like, and I stayed for 8 years, throughout which, as a family, now I will probably touch up on that. Have three kids. We moved from Paris to Switzerland, to Zurich, still with that employer. And the key reason was that my wife and I, we wanted to bring up our family in a different environment from a big city like Paris, even though it's a wonderful city. But in our opinion, more for young couples than families. And now professionally, there was an opportunity to join Lint. And it was a good timing, because also career-wise in consulting, I was about to, transition from this more project executional role to more a sales role. And I actually wanted to see what the industry looks like. And it was also an opportunity to cut down a little bit on the travel. Mm-hmm. So I landed the job at Lint. First, I was doing some strategy and transformation work in our operations team. I guess historically, because of being an engineer, I've had an inclination to these topics, even though marketing and sales have been also very interesting. But I started there, and then basically the group needed or looked for someone to help them put in place a program cross-functionally, which we can go more in detail. But I think it's unnecessarily technical and relevant for the company. But basically, what it is about is to implement change both technically in different functions, be it sales, marketing. They're more on a strategic level. What are the products you want to innovate in? What are the markets you want to develop in? Digital is obviously a big new channel. Then also technically, like in supply chain, Lint is not a big player today and has plenty of opportunity for growth in Asia Pacific, Latin America. How do we bring the product there? Do we need to change the supply chain in a certain way? There's a sustainability which comes a lot, today, more and more to the forefront, especially for a player like us who sources the key raw ingredients, from farmers around the Equatorian area. So that's an important topic, which wasn't really such a big topic and should have been maybe 20 years ago or even 10 years ago. And then there is also the topic of people, which for Lint is a big one. Lint is a very traditional company, very successful one, and we want to capitalize on it, and at the same time lure or attract and retain also the new talent and the people who come up with the new things or new elements like Gen AI, which we didn't talk about it a couple of years back. At that time it was blockchain, and before that it was big data. They're all a little bit linked, but this is something where Lint needs to accelerate, and people is also a big part of it. And we are looking at long-term 2030 objectives, and that's basically what triggers the whole program, which now I lead, and that's where I ended up where I am right now.
Amazing. I love it. Robert?
Yeah, so as part of that, attracting and retaining talent, like what are some of the core strategies that you're using to set Lint apart from other companies?
Yes. So how far will I go? I'm in the office. I could just turn around and unblur my screen, and you would probably see the whole thing on the wall. I think Lint is different from other companies, which it be it FMCG or other industries. In culture, culture is like a little bit like a purpose. It's a big word, but it's so often used that I think it's a bit inflated. So let me explain what I mean by the culture. We are very proud to be a very decentralized organization. So Lint is a publicly traded company. I can say 5.5 billion turnover, so not a small one. 15,000 employees. We have 24 subsidiaries. Now we have a very small headquarters, and the subsidiaries are like own islands of own enterprises. The headquarters is doing a lot of business support when it comes to regulatory compliance, strategy, subject matter expertise, but we give a lot of empowerment and, as a result, accountability to local countries. So if there is an employee, whether it's someone who wants to be a CEO, or if it's someone who doesn't have the aspiration to be a CEO, but have an interesting career in any sort of function, if they are in the country or in a subsidiary, it's like their own enterprise, and they can shape it. It comes with a little bit of responsibility and maybe stress, because you don't have, let's say, the group behind you which tells you do this and that and that, and you only execute, which is the case in many big multinational FMCGs without naming them. They are mostly built on those principles. They synergize a lot in one central head office, and then they direct from there. This is not Lint. So this is to answer a little bit lengthily at your question, like how is Lean different and how we want to attract people. So we want to attract those who like this entrepreneurship of owning, being responsible, being accountable. We call it culture, but I needed to explain it more because I think culture today, everyone talks about culture and maybe everyone means something else. So that's what I mean.
The shared set of behaviors in and around empowerment. I'm curious how coming into an organization like Lint that is all about the 2.0 new school empowerment within rather than power over style of leadership, how has that changed or impacted your personal leadership style?
Mm-hmm. It's a very good question because it was a big, and probably still is, it's a big point. When you come from consultancy, and I assume it's very similar in most of the big consultancies, I loved it there, but it's a very military style. You see the hierarchies, the boundaries or the levels in the meetings, they are non-existent in the sense everyone has to contribute. Everyone is required, to challenge, contribute. But you have a very clear career path. You start here. This is what you need to do. Then you are promoted. And everything is tuck. The manager has a easy job to manage people from a motivational point of view because basically it's 6 p.m. on a I don't know, Thursday, and you want something done for tomorrow morning. It will be done. You don't question that it's 6 p.m. It will be done, right? And I sort of expected it. You come, to a corporation. That's not first of all how life, should work, mm-hmm. And it's not how life really works. So that's why also consulting and some other and many other professions are different from what I would call reality. And so I wanted to see the reality. So this was then for me, one change and one that I could actually expect. And it doesn't mean that people work or are less motivated in here. It's just you work differently. You don't work, you maybe you work a bit more smartly, and we can touch upon that in a moment. So this was one change, and then the other one when I said like I'm still probably learning it is that I'm sitting in this particular position where, as I said, we are extremely decentralized, but I'm one of the few. I mean, we are a bit more than 100 at the headquarters. So I'm actually facing in my job very often the challenges and the problems that enterprises have, where you need to make a decision on behalf of the corporation, and you don't know if should it come from the headquarters or should it come from the locals. But if you do ask the locals, there is 24 of them. How do you make an agreement? But we are still decentralized, so it should be them, but it cannot be complete anarchy. And these are then the pain points which I often work on when it comes to change. And what I see is, and I fully support, the way we operate, the way we are organized, and the way which brought us success. But of course, it makes my life much more difficult because then sometimes I have to convince 24 stakeholders about something, mm-hmm. rather than saying we do it this way. Mm-hmm. Then you could say once you manage to make that conviction and have everyone on board, then you have a stronger grip on it and a stronger buy-in, and then you can go. Yeah.
So what have you had to adapt or change in your leadership style in order to accomplish that amongst the troops, that consensus?
I think there is just me as a leader, when I was thinking, before this discussion, what kind of a leader am I? Am I different? Am I not a different leader? And again, you can say, how do you define a leader? You can start there. But I think what differentiates me, or what I like to do, is I like to listen quite a bit up front or in general. Maybe it comes from, certainly it's also very, how do you call it? Personal, like is in me. But also probably the experience of, having lived in different countries, started the consulting life in France, where, okay, I could speak French, but it wasn't 100% fluent French. And there maybe you prefer to listen first, understand, and then act. And I think that has shaped me to the way I work today. When be it direct report or up or lateral leadership, I'm the kind who prefers to first listen through, reflect, and then act. It has advantages, but it also has disadvantages. It takes a bit longer sometimes than to go to action, but this has helped me, I think, here to create more of an environment of consensus and of, I would say, like involving others, which then has a better buy-in into the whatever decision or project or idea you are working on. And the adaptation was such that here I just need to have much more patience. I need to take much more time to do that listening and to actually understand what the issue is, because just the number of stakeholders is higher than before, where you had a week to come up to an answer and there is not more. So then you have to start making shortcuts and the famous 80-20. And basically you are a little bit like a bulldozer. You just go and basically by the end of the week you have to have the answer. Mm-hmm. Whereas I think here in at Lind, or currently where I am, it doesn't work that way. It wouldn't work that way, because at the end of that week I may have the answer, but if no one is bought into it, then it's just a piece of paper, and nothing happens the next day.
That's the
so
usual
2.0
transformation.
Say it again.
That's the usual change transformation is folks write a report and nobody buys into it, and then it goes away.
You see, we could have also called the program like evolution or acceleration or progression. We picked the name transformation to challenge and make people ask themselves with a little bit dramatic word, why do I have to change if I have been successful for the past 20 years and Lind has been doing things the same way over and over? And I'm very happy about it. We started asking these questions long before we have a huge burning platform where we would say, hey, we have to change from one year to another. Otherwise we are, in a big trouble. That's very different from companies who are probably in tobacco industry or car industry, right? There, when you talk about transformation, I think you don't have the luxury to get everyone on board, whether you like it or not. And I think it's a fact. And I think in that industry, for those transformations, it's more beautiful academia to say, yeah, let's get everyone on board. But you really don't have that much time. So you need to act. And there, again, you have to go to your 80-20 and maybe even sacrifice a few things to transform and even survive. So I can relate to leaders and companies who are in dire need of transformation because they fight for survival, if they don't have the luxury to bring everyone on board. And then it's also individual how you do it most efficiently, and probably also as a persona, if you manage to bring people on board quickly or if you need much more time.
I'm so deeply curious to know if you understand the mindset strategy that is embedded in that type of approach that you've described. Because clearly, anybody who's trying to drive change of any kind needs to set a safe condition for change to even happen, right? And everything that you've described in terms of how you're not in scarcity, urgency, the need for speed, because that just goes against the grain of what is required to effectively change things, right? Like on a deeper level. But what you're doing when you're actually sitting there and actively listening and hearing everybody out before starting to bring people together in a consensus is you're creating a psychologically safe space. And that is the foundation for change and growth.
I agree with you. Never thought of it or never defined it with these words. But yes, but I think it's also very, very human that there is probably much science behind it, but it's also just very simple and logical that if
you would think common sense, right? You would
no,
think.
not yeah, but it's like if you need to,
We wish it
it's
were.
like a water polo team, right? I imagine, or anything like, for instance, my small trick. I have a project or I have a problem or something, and there is someone who is not fully on board, and we need to go into a steering committee to discuss things. My experience shows the best thing to get this person on board is to let him or her present that part. And they can then criticize as much as possible what they want to criticize, as long as we are, aligned on the key things. Typically, if this person is fully on board by responsibilizing him or her to, present that idea of hers or his, then these people become much more involved and much less critical and much more in this the search for a solution. So what you describe like psychological safety, for me, it's more like, well, I listen to you, I try to understand because maybe you know better than me, number one. Number two, well, I need you, you need me, so let's, work together. And number three, yeah, I mean, if I need to have someone on board and responsibilize that person, and then they ideally are on board. Of course, it doesn't always work, but then try to understand why it doesn't work, right?
Mm-hmm.
But again, we are describing how, let's say, the majority of cases happen, right? There are then cases which don't happen this way.
Mm-hmm. It's not a perfect science because perfection doesn't exist.
I'm not even sure if it's science. I'm sure there is some chemistry behind it, how people think, and
it's neuroscience.
Yes, that's what I meant. I call it chemistry. Sorry, neuroscience.
Yeah.
It's a great strategy, right? And what you're picking up on is folks like to be right, and they like to be successful, and
recognized for it.
Absolutely. And so it's like, even if I'm not 100% in, if I stand in front of a room and I'm like, this is the project I'm running, well, now I need it to be successful. Otherwise, I look bad. And so that's where you're seeing the creativity and then the buy-in coming from.
Definitely.
I'm curious if we could dig into this a little bit. I heard at the first part of your story that you're really focused on attracting the talent that's going to help you to continue to transform this organization and keep it innovative and at the cutting edge. So what are some of those characteristics that you are looking for when you're trying to build out that in your organization so that you actually are a place that future generations want to continue to come, especially the top talent in future generations?
No. And I would slightly correct the interpretation. It's not all about change. So it's not like we want to attract only change agents or people who are interested. No. So change is part of our success journey. And we need it. And it happens that, I am very much involved in it and I lead the program, but there is so much more to it. We still need to continue doing the great things we have been doing. And I strongly hope some of our products, for instance, the Lindor balls, or some of the tablets or the Holo Bunnies, for Easter. These are products which are phenomenal, and we enchant the world with chocolate. That's our purpose with them and with many others, and we want to continue to do that. So I think when Rob asked what is different, that is this entrepreneurship which I said, right? And then I don't think we have to be different in everything. So we also try to offer, similar things which probably other companies try to offer, like career path or career growth for those who, and there is many, are interested in that. Meaning being able to set your goals, set a roadmap or a plan how to get there. Having said that we have 24 or so subsidiaries worldwide, the mobility of going from country to country, we are strong believers in the value of this. Majority of our leaders, be it be it the group management level or one or two below, they have been with the company for, on average, I would say easily 15 years. So old timers, and this has worked. So we want to then, attract people and retain people also, that we attract and people who are here so that they stay for long. I think being how do you call that? Having good working conditions, where you don't live under, when I watch your TED Talk, Rob, so we definitely try to avoid those types of red bosses as much as possible, and I think we quite successfully achieved that. But it's different per country. Like in China, the Chinese team will do it differently than a team in the US or in Europe, and I think that's fine. And that's probably our strength, because if we were pushing one way of doing it out of Zurich, we would probably do it everywhere the Swiss way, and probably it wouldn't stick. So this is what I meant, the advantage of having it so decentralized. So look, I think I mentioned the key which are proper to us, and then many of the, I would call them must-haves, which you expect in a company.
Amazing. Now, Rasto, we got to ask you, as someone who's a brain behind the business, what advice would you give our listeners about succeeding as a leader in 2024 and beyond?
Mm-hmm.
If I knew, I would say. No, look, business leader, it's such a vast statement that I will probably address a percentage of. You can be a business leader from left to right. I think, and you are probably also going in the direction of the famous word purpose. I think I would call I would use the word goal. It's always easy whether you are a leader managing a huge team, or you are a leader managing yourself, because I would call that also a leader, so that the listeners, in my perspective, don't imagine that the leader has to be someone who has hundreds of people below or around them. Try to figure out what you want. If you don't know exactly what you want, test a few things, and once you have settled on the goal, and that's key, and you need to be convinced that it's the right one. Then the way there, make it as enjoyable as possible. And there are certainly many different ways to achieve a goal, be it progressing in your career, or having a perfect work-life balance, or if you're a researcher, discovering something. When I say enjoy it, it's also work at a place where the people around you fulfill you, or you're happy to be around them, because then obviously you look forward to being with them, and then working with them, and it turns a little bit you don't think about it as work, but more of a it is fun, right? And I'm even getting paid for it. So I guess that would be the advice, but the most difficult part is to figure out what is it that you want.
What is that for you, Ross?
Yeah, exactly. I was expecting this question. That's what I'm saying.
You saw me coming. But I really am curious, what is the purpose of your leadership? Have you ever thought about what you want your legacy to be someday?
I have asked myself this question. I don't necessarily have the answer. I will be honest, right? A legacy. I don't know, am I too early in my career to start thinking about a legacy? I can tell you what I'm very pleased to hear about my way of leading, or my way of working, or my way of teaching and collaborating from colleagues, is if they say they have learned things from me, or because of me, or thanks of me. It doesn't have to be that I explain things. It's that I have let them discover, understand, do things which they would have probably not done without me. And I think this is what describes, or this would be one of the definitions of a leader, someone who, or as a result, it's someone who, as a result of whom someone else does or experiences something which they wouldn't have without, that leader. It doesn't have to be necessarily that it's a direct order. It can be a self-discovery. It can be a self, sort of like you come to a realization thanks to that person. So that for me would be the description of a leader, but one of the descriptions. But so I'm very pleased if people say, hey, I really enjoyed working with you and I've learned so much, right? Because when you learn that you have grown, likely you have enjoyed it. If it's not like, hey, I've learned through so many mistakes, I'm so thankful to you, that wouldn't be the case. So if you ask me today, I would say, yeah, I would like to leave, these will be big words, but like leave a lot of people a bit richer, a bit, more knowledgeable and more skilled about things. Hard to define, one thing.
Waking up that human potential is what Brene Brown calls leadership, right?
Okay.
It's like seeing that potentiality in people and being able to awaken it, right? In some way, shape, or form, whether it's financially, intellectually, emotionally. You're just talking about enjoying and having fun whilst on these missions that can feel so intense sometimes, but that's really what you're describing, right? Is like fundamentally helping people grow in some way, shape, or form.
Yes, I would agree. It's just that you are fully right. I think in this podcast or in general, when you talk to colleagues, friends, people, one needs to go a bit deeper and try to describe it with their own words. What exactly is it? Because it's exactly statements like and culture and purpose and enjoyment. Like, what exactly is it? Which maybe it's I don't think it's only me, but sometimes it's difficult to fully comprehend. Like, what is it concretely? Like, are there steps 1, 2, 3 for culture? Well, probably not. Are there steps 1, 2, 3 for purpose? Well, probably not. So you hear about it everywhere, but I'm afraid you hear about it a lot of the times on this, 50,000 feet level.
That's why we started this next iteration of our podcast, in fact, was so that we could share stories, which since the sands of human history has been the way that we transmit meaning, right? And that really is definitely embedded in all the answers that we received from you today, sir. So
Okay.
Thank you very much. Do you want to tell us a little bit about Lint and what Lint's up to before we let you go and the mission that you're on? You talked about helping the world have these extraordinary experiences through your chocolates, I believe. So,
look, I in a few sentences, when I was leaving my previous employer, I had two possibilities, and both were in the consumer goods industry. One was Lint, and the other one was a different company, more in this hygiene. And during COVID period, it would have been, a perfect company, but useful product, but not really,
But you can't eat it.
You can't eat it. Now, if I ask both of you, it's probably I should have done it at the beginning, but if you close your eyes and I say Lint, like, what do you think of?
The truffle.
What do you think of?
The smooth
the truffle.
chocolate.
Look at Susan, like you are smiling, you're ear to ear. And so this is one thing. This is what the company is about. Like, you speak to friends, you go to an event, where do you work? Lint. Oh, Lint, that's wonderful. Like, it makes me feel good. Then in our purpose, what we say is like we enchant the world with chocolate. I think it's a very nice company purpose, because that's what we try to do. We don't have it very sophisticated. We are a company now, technically speaking, very simple, because we make and we sell chocolate. We don't have a huge portfolio of pet food, soda, chocolate, and snacks, and this. No, we do chocolate, right? Lint, when you come to a meeting, you in the end realize that you are trying to solve a problem which in the end should help enchant, Rob with a piece of chocolate, because it will be better chocolate, because maybe it will be cheaper chocolate, but ideally it generates even a bigger smile, on your face when you either offer it to someone or you eat it to, self-indulge. And I think that's pretty cool.
We think it's pretty cool too.
It's amazing. Actually, a friend of mine in high school was the Lindt rep in Ottawa, and one time I went to his house, he had 900 pounds of Lindt chocolate
Lucky
in his
you.
garage.
Lucky you.
But it is what it is. Now, of course, if folks out there, you want to connect with Rasto, I've dropped his LinkedIn in the podcast notes, so you can definitely find him there. And then obviously for Lindt, go to your grocery store or chocolate store. It will be there. Rasto, it's been an absolute pleasure to have you on the show. And of course, we got to talk again sometime soon off mic, because it's always a pleasure to reconnect with you.
Thank you very much, Rob. Thank you very much, Susan. It was my pleasure, and very, meaningful and interesting topics that you discuss with me and with, other colleagues and people, which are very relevant for business, but also for just, everyday life, to make it more enjoyable or better, probably make us advance, to reuse, I think grow, Susan, to reuse your words. So thanks for the invitation. It was my pleasure.
Thank you. And of course, for all things executive coaching, leadership development, keynote speaking, and more, head on over to elitehighperformance.com. As well as, if you like this episode, hit subscribe and share the episode with your friends. Susan, where do you want to leave us today?
I'm so happy that we were able to hold this safe space for Rasto as he's out there holding it for everybody else in his organization. He hadn't even thought of his legacy factor before. And here he is living and breathing it. I know this episode is going to change somebody's, and I say buddies plural, because I know we've got so many leaders up against disruption right now with the economic uncertainty coming out of a pandemic, and sometimes that means that they get stuck in that scarcity mindset, right? Where they're convincing themselves, because their nervous system's in a state of fight or flight, that there's not enough time to hold space. There's not enough time to hear our people's ideas. And now we have this tremendous story embedded with all this meaning and mindset strategy that shows our leaders what is possible, right? When you come from a grounded space like he clearly is, when you get conscious with it and start to study these mindset strategies and principles like psychological safety, you simply can't afford not to when you hear about what that is able to generate in terms of your organization's innovation. And I just feel like this is such a timely message for so many of our leaders right now. So Rasto, thank you for coming in and making that case in story form. I really appreciate it, buddy.
Thank you. You're welcome.
And for me, this is what works in change management.
Mm-hmm.
If you look at the stats on change management, it's somewhere in the 70 to 80% of change management projects fail.
Mm-hmm.
And it's this element of, well, I said we should do it, and we should do it. And especially in the context of Rasto, and like I've had this happen in my career with head offices somewhere else, and someone puts together a plan and it doesn't actually fit the folks that are actually out there doing the work. And this is the part is and you're very well connected with this, right? Is you have to talk to those folks in the 24 regions, because they have input about actually what happens at their site. And that's going to be different based on what they do and their culture and all these things. And it's not that you take everything they say as gospel. And it's not that you create this, plan where it's sort of amorphous and folks can do whatever they want at every site, right? But it's getting the feedback, gets the buy-in, that creates folks moving in the right direction. And so, that even works as much as the short tip about having someone present about it. So use those hacks. They're great hacks. They'll get people on your side, and ultimately you'll be able to make change. Rasto, it was absolutely amazing to have you on the show, and everybody listening, thank you so much for listening, and we'll see you all next week.
Bye, everyone.
Bye-bye.